So we'll now move on to the part where we will hear from you. So please feel free to share your experience or ask like questions. Okay. So anybody want to share their experience or ask like questions? Okay. I had a question from like a friend the other day about toxic like parents. Okay. So because she wasn't sure whether she had a toxic like parent or not. Okay. And she had never experienced like life with like a non-toxic parent. So therefore, she was unsure, but she felt, I mean, she showed some of the symptoms, which is she felt drained and tired all the time. She felt like her mother was really clingy like to her, but at the same time, she wasn't sure whether was it because like her parents are divorced and that's why her mother was clinging on to her, because in a way she almost like felt like she was that she had to take care of her mother because her mother had divorced from her father and had no one else like but her. Okay. So I actually told her that there is a high possibility that her mother is a toxic parent because the kind of like neediness and clinginess goes beyond that of like a normal like parent. I mean, most parents would actually kind of okay, if you're divorced and whatnot, you know, you'll find some activity to do like on your own and all, but to insist that your daughter has to like accompany you, has to live with you, you know, even though she has the means to live like on her own, it went a little bit much. And also, especially when she realized that her mother is trying to control all her relationships. So every single man that she dated is never good enough like for her, and is always out to do something like nasty or like that like to her. Yeah. So in the end, when she realized that, but luckily it was quite a mild case of like toxicity. So when she realized that, what she did was she just drew better boundaries with like her mother, and she just kind of like learned to say like no to her mother. Yeah. And once she started, she found that it wasn't really that like difficult. Okay. Yeah. So hope like, yeah. So because actually drawing boundaries, like when we say talk about distancing like yourself as one of the ways of overcoming the trauma, to distance yourself, you have to draw like boundaries. So boundary drawing is like really important. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so yeah, so go ask, is there toxic in-laws? Yes. So actually, if you have a toxic like parent, okay, when you marry somebody, they become toxic in-laws to the other person. Yeah. So so basically, so yes, there are toxic like in-laws, and but toxic in-laws can sometimes be very sort of like subtle, you know, and but if you notice like the some of the, let's say, toxic parent syndrome in your husband or your wife, then there's reason to suspect that your that you know your in-laws may actually be toxic. Okay. In which case, what you can also do is, as if the in-laws leave you alone, that's fine. But if the toxic in-laws are like targeting you or persecuting you, then you may actually want to do something about it, especially if over a long period of time you are feeling pressured and traumatized like by them. Yeah, because there are sort of like cases whereby toxic in-laws actually instigate conflict within like a couple, and sort of like instrumental sometimes in breaking down like certain like relationships, you know. And toxic in-laws sometimes they do not just attack like the relationship of the couple, they may also sort of like attack the relationship of the children and the mother or like the father, you know. I think there was one particular case I saw before whereby this my client and her husband, they are both like working. Okay. And what happens, so when they had children, the children were looked after by her in-laws. Okay. And after a while, she realized that the children were not close to her at all. So even when she tried very much to when she tried actually to um show affection to the children, spend more time with the children whenever she could and all, she started to feel like the children were pushing her like away. So she started observing what was happening, and then she realized that the in-laws, when taking care of the children, would feed them propaganda which is against like her, like saying how she's a bad mother because she decided that because money is more important than her children, mainly because she decided to go and work rather than quitting her job and looking after the kids, you know. So the in-laws are telling the children things like, your mother loves money more than she loves you, you know, and your mother feels like you're a burden, she's trying to run away from you, that's why she's gone to work, things like that. So so this kind of like a toxicity is very like it's very like insidious, you know, and it's like everywhere. uh and if she didn't observe it and she just sort of like started to react to it, then she would not be able to resolve it. So in the end, what she did was that she actually uh uh worked it out such that they got like a helper, so that they no longer needed like the in-laws like help to look after the kids. And she started to spend more time with the children and reverse like and worked very hard on reversing what was it like the in-laws had actually like taught like the children like about her. And it needed a lot of reassurance and everything like on her end. Yeah. So yes, so there is toxic in-laws. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else that would like to share their experience or have like a question that they want to ask?
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Jeannie. Yes.
Well, I definitely had toxic parents, but it took me a while to realize that, but also took even longer to find out where was that coming from. For the longest time, I thought it was my mother, but then it was from my dad. You know how Chinese couples, sometimes they need to be a unit, right? So mom always on dad's side. So mom was pretty much just acting out what dad was feeling or telling her when they're alone. So anyway, so that, I mean, there's so much to talk about them, just a lot of the hurtful things that I have said. But what it's recently, you know, since I've been working on myself, things have changed a little bit. It has improved, and I actually kind of stopped talking to them a few years ago, just barely kind of having a text here and there, like as if I'm safe, I'm still alive, but then never really give them a lot of detail. And that's how I kind of like the whole distancing. And also for everyone here, my parent lives in LA, I'm in New York. So I moved myself across the continent to get away. well, from LA to the Northern Bay Area to Texas and then to New York. So every few years, every chance I get, I move away. And the furthest away right now is in New York and LA, and to all the working, that's how I kind of to realize that, you know, the problem. And but there's something that my dad continues to do is he has tendency to exaggerate everything, even the temperature. Like my mom, this past weekend, even my mom was like, oh, is it getting hot in New York? I'm like, yeah, it's getting hot. And then my dad's like, yeah, it's even hotter here. And it's like 101 degrees. And I'm literally looking at the app. It's 91 degrees, also 91 in New York. But one is dry heat and one is a humid in the East Coast. And I'm like, just like, why do we always need this competition with them? Always that like, we have it worse. Like the underlining, like, you better not be happy or you are enjoying your life too much on your own, because look at us, there's suffering here. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
I'm just like yeah, I can see on the app. It's like I start calling him out on some of this, like it's not that hot.
Yeah. I think it's all, so you might need to go back a little bit further, because your father is not just exhibiting signs of a toxic parent, but he was also a victim of a toxic parent.
Yeah,
That's why he feels like he has to suffer. So if you look at this competition, this, like, it's a very silly thing, like the temperature thing. Basically, what he is saying is that, oh my God, I'm suffering like here. So, because we're suffering, you need to show us care and affection. So that was like what I said about the no pain, no gain, and feeling like you have to be in pain or suffering to deserve love. Yeah. So what happens is that when your relationship like improve, he might stop being the toxic parent to you, but he now reverts somewhat to the trauma that he had suffered as a child of a toxic parent. Yeah. So sometimes you will find that, so I'm glad you brought this up, because as toxic parents grow older, we actually find that they start to switch roles sometimes. And also it's like we then start to see that they have toxic sort of like parents as well. Yeah, it was very interesting, because so have you met your grandparents before?
yeah. Long time.
How are they to your father? Like,
my grandmother was, very close to my dad, but my grandfather was not very close to my dad. There's a lot of criticism, a lot of,
okay, yeah. So he is like the victim, like, as well. So if you extend some compassion like to that, you might be able to sort of like be like to put it in perspective. So for example, sometimes you could laugh it off and make a joke about it, so you can call him out but make a joke like about it. Yeah, because it's quite interesting, like you mentioned this, because one of my clients actually came to me and was very upset with the mother, because she felt like her mother was like ruining her life, doing all these things, and she had just found out that she used to think it was normal, until she realized with all the healing and all, that actually her mother was like very toxic and all. And then it was interesting, because she starts to talk about the behavior of her grandmother. And actually, the grandmother's behavior was what she also saw in her mother. So the grandmother would be very nice to my client, but would behave to the mother like in a very critical, judgmental, you're not good enough like fashion. And this is what like the mother is like doing to her as well. So then that's where we realize that it is an intergenerational thing, and perhaps the grandmother's mother was also problematic. So it just gets like worse generation until somebody breaks it. So that's why I think energy work is important, because for you, it was when you started working on yourself, you managed to break it. Because otherwise, before that, you were doing the distancing thing. You distance yourself from them in order to have some breathing space so that you can recover and get. But when you started doing like more like work on yourself, that's when the relationship starts to shift like a little, because now you have basically empowered yourself. So the power balance shift, they start to the toxic parent will realize it as well, and then they will find that they now have to have the option of responding or getting out of your life like forever. But most of the time they would respond and shift as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but it's good. And I think, like, use humor, because I mean, you as a person, you're always like humorous, right? So I think it's a good idea. Maybe the next time, like, he sort of like say some exaggerate something like that, you can actually joke about like, wow, like how, like, maybe you have some special powers, that's why you're feeling it more than like other people, and the app must be wrong, because you are the human thermometer, you must be right, or something.
Yeah.
Like, funny, so if he laughs at it, he might realize how ridiculous it sounds, and then after a while he might stop it, or it could even start to become like a inside joke between the two of you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But thanks for sharing, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Okay. So, anybody else wants to share your experience, or if you have a question?
Oh, I can share.
Okay. Hi, Maggie.
Hello. So I think that, I mean, obviously with all the healing work and all those that I've done for the past 10 years, it does like, you know, give me the better awareness, but also that I think it's not just my toxic mother, but also because it could be like all the toxic family relationships that I have, right? Like for example, like, you know, my mom will, I mean, not that they are in cahoots, but obviously because it's based on a shared objective, that they have to get me to do all the stuff for my mom. So my sister will also like say, no, it's the job of the youngest kid to do it. So, I mean, Amy, I'm just curious, like, you know, in this case whereby obviously I'm born into it, right? Like, you know, I chose her as my mother, and I knew that through our, you know, several or multiple healing that we had was that, you know, there was certain karma that we had before. I mean, I'm sharing the group in a sense whereby it was, I can't remember, it was something about like I was like, I think like me and my husband in the previous life, and then my mom was like the woman who stole my husband, right? Or something, a mistress or something. Somehow in this life, you know, out of the punishment that so she has to give birth to me to go through that part. But of course, in my human mind now, that why would I do that, right? I don't even want to get any relationship with her. But obviously, you know, this whole thing is all life cycle beyond. I mean, what's done cannot be undone. It's just that all I'm hoping is that, you know, maybe I hope that there won't be any connections further in the next life.
I think sometimes, right, when your type of situation happens, it's because you have some like lesson to learn, or this person, in this case your mother, is positioned in your life to help you to understand certain things like about like yourself, you know. Because so for example, it's like because of your mother's like toxicity, it might be it might have pushed you towards like certain like behavior. But if you didn't have like her in your life, maybe you wouldn't have decided to go on a self-discovery journey. Maybe you wouldn't have decided to go on a spiritual like route and everything. Sometimes it's also because like the existence of certain people in our lives, and in this case here, of course, the toxicity does not just come from like your mother, it's also from your sisters and everything. Sometimes because of this type of people in our lives, we are then pushed to understand more about ourselves, because we are driven to try to resolve like the issues. So that actually, so I think there is a reason why they are sort of like here in your life. And if you feel like in the next life you don't want to have anything to do with them, then you need to make sure that you clear any entanglements like with them in this particular life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Here. Okay, you're welcome, Maggie. Thanks for sharing. Okay. Anybody else would like to share? If not, we can always end like early, like today again. Here. So, okay, we can. I think we can take like one last question if anybody has any question. Okay. No. Okay. So, so if not, then yes, Amanda. Yeah.
Yeah. So if, I mean, they may not, I don't think they're actually very toxic parents, but then maybe just their energies, their underlying energies like that. And then if people say that I'm not living in my own energy, so it's still a toxic parenting.
It depends. So you might want to actually look at like in the list of the characteristics, how many of it you fulfill. So let's say, for example, out of all the characteristics, you only have about three, then it might not really be down to your like toxic parents, because for a lot of the people who have toxic parents, actually it fulfills like at least one third or more of the like the list. So if you only have a few, then maybe it's not about your parents like toxicity, because our parents are not perfect anyway, so they make mistakes and everything. But for a parent to be toxic, they have to exhibit, like you have to exhibit the signs that I've gone through just now under the toxic parent syndrome, and your parents have to exhibit quite a few of that signs.
Okay.
Yeah. So if not, then no, you don't have a toxic parent, because parents can't be perfect. So they may be just like normal human beings that are not extremely aware, so they will make mistakes, they will say things and all. But when we talk about toxic parents, right, it is a very like, for example, every single time you have a conversation with them, they will be trying to put you down, and whether they put you down in a very like nasty tone or they say it nicely, is still a undermining of like your confidence and all. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, for example, I have like a friend, and she has a toxic mother, but the mother is very well bred, so the mother never screams at her or whatever. But what happens is that every single thing like she does will be criticized. So for example, she dresses up to go out, and then the mother would say, are you going out like wearing that, like this, okay, like, are you going out wearing that? And then had this look of disdain on her face. And it happens all the time. It doesn't matter what she wears, she can be wearing, she like, and she ends up like feeling obligated to like be dressing up all the time. She spends so much time like, dressing up. She spends so much time on her makeup and everything, that is like, crazy. And that is because the mother is toxic in that way, even though she doesn't like, verbally abuse her, but the way that she like speaks to her and critic is a very harsh criticism, although it's like disguised as a polite criticism. Yeah. So if your parents have not done that and all, then it's unlikely that they're unlikely to be like toxic parents, then so you can like rest like easy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Okay, so I think we've come like to the end like of our psychic like circle today. So everybody just like have a good rest of like the night. And tonight is actually the full moon, or today is the full moon actually. So just if you have time, just remember to meditate and go easy on yourself. Drink lots of like water, and if you want to do some like energy healing work on yourself, or make some affirmations and set some good intentions here. And then we will see you at the next psychic circle. Okay. Goodbye everybody. Here, take care. Bye bye.
Bye.